It was great. I loved it. It's an exciting job for a young person. You know, fast turnaround, thinking on the spot, you know, big deadlines coming up, you know, things happen at the drop of a hat and off you go. I think in terms of storytelling, it's actually a really good discipline to tell a story in, you know, what could be as little as a minute 30, still has to have a beginning, a middle and an end. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but also it was a little bit like fast food. It wasn't very fulfilling or sustaining long term, and I was always more interested in doing more long form things. I hadn't done consumer affairs before, so I was quite interested in the type of story that Fairgo did, you know, fighting for the underdog and that sort of form of advocacy journalism. It was quite a different thing to do from where you actually take a side, you know, because journalism sits on the fence. And I found I really enjoyed it. And I think a little bit of that has stuck with me, actually, ever since. I'm less worried about my own bias coming through, I think, now. A lot of research went into a Fairgo story, and also a little bit of intuition. Like, you had to be really clear in your own mind that this person had been hard done by, that the other person hadn't done their utmost to try and fix it, that it wasn't just a whole string of bad luck. You know, there was a little bit of gut instinct that went with it, as well as an awful lot of research. And of course we always had a lawyer check stories if there was any shadow of a doubt or anything tricky. But I guess the thing about Fairgo is that it got results, you know, and that was always the rewarding part of it. So often you'll do a story in news, but nothing changes. I think the style of Newsnight was quite edgy in that they were looking for a younger audience. So the types of stories reflected what younger people are interested in too. So there was a lot of music, there was a lot of, you know, arts type stories, interesting, quirky, youth-related things. And then the style in which they were filmed. I recall everyone being very much in love with the Dutch tilt at that time, and different effects that you would use in editing to kind of, you know, jazz the story up. So I guess it was fun, you know, I enjoyed doing that. The stories were lighter than news, and I think after a diet of, you know, I was the police reporter on One News for a long time, and after a diet of sort of murder, rape and mayhem, it was quite nice to come off and do some lighter stuff. And Marcus was always a, you know, great character to have in the newsroom. In fact, there were some really, really talented people in there. Marcus Lush, Paul Casserly, you know, he's a magnificent writer, director, producer. Graham Hill, thank you. Graham Hill was there for a while. Mark Stelfer was there for a while. So it was really, you know, quite a team of big personalities, and yeah, lots of fun. Melissa Lee basically harassed and stalked me, and I've always loved the program, and even when I was working on other, you know, programs, I would always do a few stories for Asia Down Under because I believed in the program, and because I'm half Chinese it was important to me. She kind of asked me to produce, and I wasn't that keen on producing, but at the time Winston Peters was doing a real anti-Asian bashing campaign, and I think in the end that convinced me more than anything to go and produce Asia Down Under, just to get back at him. There was a huge amount of anger within the community at the time. People really wanted us to go away and leave this alone, except his family, who wanted us to be there. And I remember driving down from Auckland with Tony Sinclair, who's the lawyer who wrote the script, and somehow the local community had gotten my cell phone number, so I just took abusive phone calls from Auckland to Waitara. When I arrived, I went into a chemist shop, so I wasn't feeling well, and basically got my ears pinned back by the shopkeeper. And then we had to film the recreation, and the police asked us not to because they felt that it would create unrest. And I suggested that it was their job to protect us who were going about our lawful duty, and they suggested that it wasn't. And I told the police we were going to come in at 8 o'clock and film till midnight. No, I think it was 9 o'clock and film till midnight. And we heard that cars and trucks were massing at the BP station, and they were going to block the road. So we just waited and waited and waited. We're in this big car park at the motel, sort of blocking it out and rehearsing. We had actors down from Auckland and, you know, everything. And then we got a phone call just before midnight saying they've all given up, they've gone home. So we went in and we filmed from midnight till 3 a.m. So, and I had the police on the phone the whole time saying, what are you doing, what are you doing? And I'm like, we're waiting, we're waiting. And then I rang them and I said, right, we're going in now. And actually their shift finishes at midnight, and they at that time didn't have cover, and they did actually keep someone in the station for us, which was good. I think in my sort of safe little Auckland bubble, I'd forgotten the depth of feeling in a small community. If people believed that you're bringing down that community, you know, they wanted this whole thing to just disappear and go away. You know, Waitara is no different from Rautoki. It's a low decile town, and people fight really hard to have a good town, you know, and I can understand their concern, but it was pretty full on at the time, pretty stressful and upsetting. Yeah. I was shocked when I saw the images of police dressed as an army, their faces covered, you know, all in black, on a roadblock just down the road from here. It wasn't the New Zealand that I thought I knew. Also, my mother had been public health nurse in that community for 2 generations, and so I became aware of some of the trauma that families had suffered, that children had suffered. And a few months in, I sort of felt as though those people hadn't really been given a voice. It had all been about the terrorists, you know, and what they were up to. But there was a whole lot of people who weren't even involved, who'd had their lives turned upside down, guns pointed at their heads, you know, children pulled out of their beds in the middle of the night to go and face armed police. So that's really what got me started on doing that, to give those people a voice. I always believed that there would be a police apology, because I just felt like an aberration to me. I just didn't think it would take 7 years to get there. I had to make a big decision somewhere along the line, because there's about nearly 2 years when I only shot one thing, between October 15 and Price of Peace, and I had a change in my direction. I was studying to be a naturopath, and I had to really decide whether I was going to carry on with this and how I was going to carry on with this, because I had no funding and nobody seemed to be putting their hands up to commission or give me funding. So I called a friend before I went to Tahiti, and he's a DOP, and asked if he would come and shoot this evening at the marae and the first day of the trial. And then I said, oh, it might go on a bit, might go on for some weeks or months. And he just hung in there and hung in there and hung in there, and kept saying to me, oh, we need to go and shoot this, we need to go and shoot this. And I go, yeah, we need to go and shoot this. And eventually we kind of got it there, got it filmed. And funding came through just before post-production. Following something over 7 years, you get a shift in perspective. I think I set out what I believed at the beginning is what I still believed at the end, but there were times during the process when I would say this side is more right and this side is more wrong, and that would change. I mean, like most New Zealanders, you know, looking at the footage of the surveillance footage of people with guns and patrolling, most Kiwis don't like that. Most Kiwis don't like guns unless they're being used for hunting or recreational purposes, and I'm one of those people. You know, I didn't like looking at that footage either. But in my heart, I didn't believe that Tame had any intention to hurt people, you know, and I still believe that. I feel really happy with the documentary. When I watch it, there's always little things, little flaws that directors pick up. But overall, I think it achieved what it set out to do. I think that a lot of that is to do with the great editor, Kushla Dillon, who worked on it. And there's 3 different threads in there, and it was really hard to actually tie them all together. And it says a lot for her storytelling abilities that was achieved. for me it was my first long form feature length for the cinema documentary, and that was a huge learning curve. So Christina Milliken and Roger Grant were the two producers who came on board around the start of post-production, and I learnt a lot from them, and of course the DOP, Joss Wheeler. So when I watch it, I feel pretty happy with it.